Good afternoon, everyone. We've had numerous records broken this morning across the middle part of the country with some of the coldest temperatures we've seen this winter. And if you take a look at the overall record setting map, these areas that are highlighted in the lighter blue area, that is essentially tying a daily record low. But if you were in the darker blue area, you actually broke a new record low. So that extension all the way from Montana down through the Dakotas into the Central Plains, as well as into Oklahoma and all the way down into the deep south of Texas. And that could be the things to come as the polar vortex is really pushing the coldest air mass of the season all the way down into the deep south. And it also left a fairly decent snow swath in its path over the last 3 days. These are observed snowfall totals through 7 a.m. this morning. We've had some pretty significant snows. We had the snow swath that went through the Intermountain West. Then we had a new breakout of snow about down through areas of Nebraska, back into Kansas, and yesterday it impacted the Tulsa region and also impacted areas of Missouri. I think Springdale checked in at almost 10 inches of snow, and then the northern side of Arkansas, and that swung through Tennessee as well as into Kentucky, and it's still snowing this morning across these regions, and that will only unload into portions of North Carolina as well as into Virginia later on today. But this is all compliments of the polar vortex is what we've been talking about. It started off as a stretching event where it basically became elongated, but then it got a little bit more significant when it started to split. And now we're feeling the effects of that polar vortex splitting. And you can actually see where the actual polar vortex is. It's right over areas of the Dakotas into Minnesota. It's going to park itself somewhere in the vicinity of Iowa back into Nebraska. They're going to be seeing the coldest anomalies, and a piece of that dips all the way down into the deep south. That's why we're going to be seeing such widespread significant freezes and widespread temperature anomalies. So this is your bullseye of that polar vortex. It doesn't include areas west of the Rockies. You don't really feel the effects at all from this system, but that's a sharp gradient if you're underneath that, and those 40 below average temperature anomalies are being felt in a big way as that plunges all the way down into the south central region and then shifts off to the east. So you're still feeling it across a good part of the east and much of the southeast over the days to come. But now we're talking about the snow this afternoon, because that's going to be moving into eastern areas of Kentucky with more, additional snowfall for them. And then it's actually going to be moving over the Charlotte region with several inches of snow. That will include the Raleigh-Durham region and eventually head over into Norfolk, those areas into Virginia Beach. Man, they could be really pounded. Some of the most significant snows Virginia Beach has actually seen in about 15 years. They could be approaching the double digits, if you can believe that, with that heavier snowfall. And that's only going to continue and pick up as we get into the afternoon time frame, with heavy snow, especially along the coast. And then further south, we'll have fairly significant icing start to take place. And then further south from there, we'll just have a chillier, colder rain. But overall, here's your preliminary snowfall totals that are still to come with that first winter storm as from yesterday. This is the leftover effect, and several more inches through Knoxville, back through Pikeville. That will swing into Roanoke and eventually head into the Raleigh-Durham region of another couple of inches, and then really start to pick up as we head towards the Greenville region. And then once you get along the coast back into Virginia Beach and the Norfolk region, that's when we could see some, isolated double-digit totals. Is definitely not out of the question with this snowstorm as it continues to move off to the East Coast. And once it does, and headed into tomorrow morning, we'll have a little bit of a clipper system to come in on the backside, but these are kind of lighter amounts. It's going to be swinging through areas of Michigan back through Ohio, as well as into West Virginia. You could be picking up, say, maybe a dusting, maybe 1 to 2 inches with this, but fairly nothing significant. The bigger story is that high pressure center, 1044, 1046, 1034, all the way down to the deep south. That underneath there, that is that true Arctic air that's going to be plunging, bringing more significant record lows. In fact, we could be looking at 78 daily record lows being crushed tomorrow morning across the lower 48 as the polar vortex will really unleash itself over a good part of the region, primarily the center part of the country, where it's going to park itself over areas of the Central Plains, especially there in Nebraska, with widespread 20 below zeros, numerous records. All these areas that are highlighted in the circled region, that's where you could be picking up a record low temperature. You know, single digits in Oklahoma City. They could be looking at 5 consecutive days in a row of record-breaking temperatures. That's pretty significant Arctic air mass that's going to be unfolding. Single digits continue for West Texas, even widespread 20s reaching all the way down into the coastline of Corpus Christi. That's pretty significant, folks. 26 down there for Lake Charles. Upper 20s for the Florida Panhandle. Yeah, this cold front definitely means business, and it's going to be taking its time to kind of relinquish itself, because that's, once that cold air gets trapped, it's going to take a while to kind of wind itself out. And as it does, it's still going to leave a mark, but it's also going to be bringing in a lot drier air mass. You know, your Arctic air is also your driest air. So once that system comes through and kind of parks itself, then the Arctic air primarily more or less takes over, and you'll be producing more record low temperatures when you wake up on Friday morning. In fact, another 54 across the board, especially those areas into the central part of the U.S., back into Oklahoma and Texas, getting into Louisiana and Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky gets into the action now, back through the southeast. Right? Southeast gets pounded with those record low temperatures, even along the coast where they're feeling some of that snowpack. They could be picking up some record lows. So yes, we still have more significant record lows going to be on the table. Now, once we get into Friday night into Saturday, we do have a little bit of disturbance that's going to try to creep back in. But it's going to be running into that extremely dry Arctic air mass, and it's going to be fighting itself every step of the way. But out west, we're going to be seeing the rains come back in a big way with another kind of atmospheric river event that's going to be pounding the coastline of Washington and Oregon, portions of northern California again, while we be watching this little disturbance further south in the deep south of Texas, because there's not much else going on besides those two areas. So, but notice the freeze line again. This is Saturday morning, folks. It's still going to be cold with that freezing conditions all the way down into the Gulf Coast states. So that's going to be pretty significant, as it's still going to be, you know, unloading itself, but not really record lows on Saturday morning as it tries to kind of unwind, but still fairly significant for late February standards. Still single digits, widespread teens across the Ohio Valley, getting in a good part of the Tennessee Valley, back into Colorado again, into Texas and Oklahoma, basically 20s and 20, you know, hard freeze all the way down into the deep south of the southeast. We've got teens showing up on the map into, you know, continuing into the mid-Atlantic region. And then there's single digits as you move further north up into New England. But what's going to be another driving force next as we head into the weekend, as we come out of this Arctic air mass, is we go really basically right back into a zonal flow. So as the jet stream starts to lift well north again, there is your polar jet as pretty much elongating the Canadian border. That pretty much puts the cold air back up into Canada where it belongs, that Arctic air mass. But further south, it's going to be replaced with even drier air, but it's also going to be replaced with well above average temperature anomalies as we head into the weekend, and especially in those first couple of days of next week. But there's the dry air. So we got extremely dry air coming back in the picture as the polar jet creeps well to the north. that'll be any instability or any precipitation or any type of that activity further north, while further south it's all about the drier air and the warmer air that's going to be coming off the Pacific. And some of those temperature anomalies are really going to rise pretty big time, and it's going to be pretty intense temperature swings, especially from where you're going to be tomorrow morning. But there's the red bullseye with the bullseye, the well above average over the Four Corners regions, the desert Southwest. Arizona starts turning on the heat almost to 90 degrees down there, as much of the heat will be replaced. And look where the polar vortex is now, right? It's back up into Canada, back up into Greenland, where it belongs, and it's going to be hanging out there. While it does, it's going to bring the warmer air back into the lower 48. And so by the time we head into the Monday time frame, there's those almost 90-degree temperatures approaching into the desert Southwest. Now we're talking even some record high temperatures for them. Widespread 70s and 60s, really pleasant, even spring-like temperatures coming back for the last couple of days of February, as much of the colder anomalies start to creep well north. And even these for high temperatures is not really that significant comparative to what you're going to be like, and still are, with this polar vortex intrusion. And that just continues into Tuesday, the 25th time frame. Still the 70s and 80s, you'll be feeling a lot more like spring for across the deep south, much of the southwest, much of the southeast. To the north, still overall kind of milder conditions, as you know, relative to what you're typically used to this time of year. But either way, you're not going to be anywhere close to negative numbers like what you are this week. And wow, look at Wednesday, folks. Yes, that's completely the opposite look of what you're actually seeing now. So we take a rapid 180 approach and get rid of all the colder anomalies and replace them with well above average anomalies, with that zonal flow coming back in a picture and kind of taking over much of the lower 48. And also the drier air, right? So the Arctic air has moved in. There's the precipitation that's left over from what the snowstorm is so far today. And then you got the storms coming back for the Pacific Northwest. But other than that, and this little clipper system that's going to impact the upper Ohio Valley and portions of the Mid-Atlantic, it's just high and dry really everywhere else. And this is over kind of a 7-day period. So you get the picture, right? The Arctic air is dry, and then the zonal flow is dry. So you're dry on both sides, whether you're cold or warm, in the next 7 days. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch the next update. Why I protect you before and after the storm.